Alright everyone, it's time for Vermont Issues, episode 54, Rutlands Recovery, the Good, Bad, and the Ugly. I thought I'd put, sometimes I think with this series, people from out of state, like they don't actually come here or live here, you think I'm being really negative about the state of Vermont or the Rutland region that I live in. I'm actually not, I'm just realistic. I'm realistic that there are problems here. If you don't talk about the problems that you have in your state, if you're just like gung-ho and you say, well, my state is the best, well, then it's never going to improve. Don't you want it to be even better? You know, you already think it's good, but it could be a better than it currently is. That's what I want for the state of Vermont. Look at it from my perspective. I live here. We have overburdensome taxes. We have an opiate problem, especially in Rutland at this point. It seems to be more pronounced here than in many parts of the state. We do have crumbling infrastructure in some parts of the state. And we have a problem with a governor who won't even tackle one of the top issues that people actually want tackled so that they can focus on all these other problems instead of jailing some hippie or something that comes from the West Coast and goes to UVM and dares to smoke the devil's lettuce or something like that. And that's what I would say. But there are many redeeming features, especially about Rutland. Of course, where I live, where I'm comfortable, or I should say most comfortable with life, because I'm used to it. And it's a nice town. As far as having, art and aesthetics, the downtown is quite pretty. The farmer's market is wonderful, although it doesn't run outdoors in the form that you would generally expect throughout the entire year. I think they move it into an area behind Walmart or something like that for the off-season. Although I'm not 100% sure because I've heard that, but I've never actually seen it there. So I'm not sure. Maybe they only hold it a couple times during the sort of the fall and early spring seasons. But all summer it runs. There are good restaurants in the region. I've recommended the Yellow Deli to basically anybody that I talk to about Rutland. It is the best restaurant, in my opinion, in the area. It also happens to be relatively inexpensive. It's no further beyond any other like diner sort of approach. But again, with an aesthetic that I find pleasing. It's a little bit like walking into Hobbiton or something. I should probably make a video on the Yellow Deli itself. It's run by what's generally recognized as a religious cult of messianic, I don't know whether you'd class them as Christians or Jews more, actually. But the food is excellent, and the music's good, so who cares, really? But, yeah, Rutland's also got a few other advantages over other parts of the state. Because we are sort of that swing state portion of the state, politics here are a little bit different. You saw what we did to Loris. Now, in some far blue part of the state, he probably still would have had his job. People would have turned it into a partisan issue. If he had been mayor of Burlington or something, people wouldn't have said anything. Here, we kicked him out and got Allaire in there. I still didn't think Allaire was the best possible candidate, but I was realistic and said, well, it's not Loris. It's got to be an improvement, at least hopefully now, that we don't have a mayor that's been in office for what? I think Loris was there for 5 or 6 different terms. Hopefully feels a little bit more responsible to the voters in the area, so at least we have that degree of accountability. I think there's something to be said for that, hardly a bad thing. West Rutland is actually quite nice. A lot of marble sort of structures, understructures rather, curbs. There's a rather large cemetery over there that's also, quite a sight to behold. It looks a little bit mini Arlington or something like that, only without the military connotations. One problem, though, that we have in Rutland is definitely the mall. The mall is definitely the weakest link of the entire Rutland region. It's basically empty. They still put ads out, too. It's like, oh, take your kids to a fun-filled day in the mall. What fun are they going to have? Now, they're going to go on the internet or play video games or something. They're not going to want to go to the mall. There's nothing really there for a kid, actually. I don't think there's a toy store anymore there. There's a hobby shop. They've got some interesting stuff. You wouldn't take like your 5-year-old kid there unless they happen to be inordinately into collecting baseball cards or something. There's a Victoria's Secret. Again, you're probably not taking your kids there. There's a chocolate shop, but then there's one in the downtown it's the same company. They got the same stuff. You're going to go to the one in the downtown, probably. You go in the mall and the average day is like 10 people in there. in a mall that used to have, you know, sometime during the weekend. If you went to the mall 10 years ago, there's thousands of people in there. It was balls to the wall. It was actually kind of hard to navigate at times. I've never seen it like that in the modern age. Stores, they try to set up shop there, allured by, hey, it's the Diamond Run Mall, be great. And then they go out of business within a few months. Like, they had one store called Gatsby. I think it was like antiques, vintage clothing, stuff like that. It was actually fairly cool. But they're not going to be able to survive there, not in that location. I can't remember whether they went completely belly up or whether they moved to some other location. I'm not sure. I know the smarter businesses, they just set up shop elsewhere in Rutland. And they're doing fine, largely. They just can't do anything in the mall. It's inefficient. It's too far outside of the downtown. People like the downtown feel now. Like, back in the 90s, people loved malls, wanted to go to a mall. If you go to some parts of the country, or if you have a really good, stable mall, like the malls down in fucking Texas, don't even get me started, then they can survive. The Diamond Run Mall in Rutland is not one of them. It's not a large enough community. There isn't enough space there. There's too much that's empty now. It's basically in a death spiral. And I think one of the other large stores there is going to be gone anyway. They're not going to have a mall at that point. They might as well, as I've suggested, hey, people of Rutland, talk about this to the people who run this city and also Rutland town. Put all the city and town offices in the Diamond Run Mall and get them out of the downtown and turn those back into private businesses, offices, and apartments. Concentrate the downtown more. Strengthen the downtown. It'll also probably be cheaper if we put all of those offices in one space. Wouldn't it be easier? And you wouldn't need quite as much parking, by the way, as you currently have. You wouldn't need it. The stadium could stay there, that makes sense, but put some of the other offices up there. It's an easy way. You can recover the downtown and make the mall useful and then solvent. You know, we're gonna pay for it. I would think that it would just make sense to have the offices there instead of in the downtown anyway. It makes a little bit more sense. And there are certain that you can't move. They got to be near the courthouse or whatever. Okay, granted, that makes sense. Like sheriff's office or something. State police barracks or something like that. Otherwise, though, don't you think like Social Security and some of these other things can be sent there? Like there is bus access to the mall, and that could be fiddled with because there'd be a greater flow of people there. It'd certainly be bigger crowds than you get there now. I would think that makes sense. But we have to get realistic about the fact that we do have problems as a community in Rutland. Just like the state of Vermont needs to get realistic that it may have many marks on which it's better than many other states. But that doesn't make it perfect. And it doesn't mean you should be complacent. You should be trying to improve things. When something is not, you know, as it could be, then you think about ways to make it as it could be. It's as simple as that. If you're not honest with yourself, it never happens and things get dilapidated, like Rutland side roads or something. That's the other main problem in Rutland, really transportation. Your car is going to take frost heave season. Your car is taking a hell of a beating going down any of the side roads in Rutland. These aren't even like minor roads. They're well trafficked and yet they're full of potholes. The curbs are all out of whack. The sidewalks, you wouldn't want grandma walking down them. She literally would step on a crack and break her own back, or something like that. Just sort of the way that it is. That infrastructure is totally outdated. It should basically all be replaced. It would require a huge amount of effort and quite a bit of investment. I would think that that particular investment would kind of pay off. You know, people have to walk, have kids out there. You don't want your kid falling on the sidewalk out into traffic or something. You don't want your car's, hubcaps flying off because you hit a ditch. I would assume that would cost more. Maybe they keep it like that because there are so many automotive shops. They're like, oh, well, they do brisk business because everyone's cars are getting shaken apart just driving around on the streets. But Rutland has a lot of redeeming characteristics, especially within the downtown aesthetic that we have. I think that they should free up room and let the downtown grow larger. I think that they should focus on compacting it more to make it more efficient. At least then, a greater degree of the roads in the area would certainly be maintained. It would begin to look more like downtown Burlington. And we could accomplish that with a far smaller community. It is possible to do that. You could also add a couple parks in or something like that. around the downtown that would look nice. You could have a whole strip of parks around the whole thing with a pedestrian mall setup if you tried hard enough. Bennington's redeveloping one of its blocks. In Barrie, they're thinking about that, although I think they just filed a brief on Lauzon there to stop him from doing that. They're like, oh, improper use of, what was it, improper development or something, because he happens to be the de facto mayor or something. We can do it. If Bennington can do it, why not Rutland? We're twice as large as Bennington is. Let's redevelop 2 or 3 blocks. Why not? But it's too great an investment. No. Ask the state for money. They give it out like candy to everybody else. I understand that we have a high tax rate anyway, but if we're going to be taxed, we might as well get something out of it. The state's not going to come in and take care of the local roads. They're not going to come in and do anything with them all, but they might put their state offices there that are in Rutland. If we ask them to, say, hey, why there's so much dead space in there? Let's at least take up the empty shop fronts and use them for offices of some sort. It could work. And it would be cheaper, probably, in the long term, because you're getting more tax revenue. You have those downtown locations that people really want, by the way, that are higher rent, generally speaking. You have businesses in the lower level. Above, you've got offices and or apartments, or combinations of the two. Some people have both in the same structure. That works. It'd be much more efficient. You realize how much space you could free up with all of the state offices that are gathered around the parking garage area only in downtown Rutland? How many state offices are in those buildings? It's not necessary for them to be there. They could be in the mall. And then that whole area of buildings could be turned into something that's more productive and private and bring in more revenue. And it would be easier to maintain that region because it'd be private. So private individuals would maintain it. Wouldn't that be lovely? As for the mall, yeah, let the state and town and whatever take care of the mall. There's nothing there to do now anyway. It's half empty. I think it's more than half empty, actually. I think more than half of the shop fronts in the Diamond Run Mall, I believe, right now stand empty, including one of the larger fronts. I know on the eastern side of the mall. I can't remember if J.C. Penney's is still there. I think they closed shop too. Both of the jewelry stores are gone. All of the restaurants in what used to be the food court are gone. There's not a whole lot there to do. I guess you got to bring your own food, that's for one thing, and then get prepared to go to Kmart, which is looking more and more dilapidated anyway. It's a problem. They used to have Sears there too. Of course, I think they closed that up because they downsized, but they also gobbled up Kmart, if I remember. It's a subsidiary brand now, not an independent chain. So those are some problems with the Rutland area. But don't think about it too badly. We do have nice parks, nice woods. And it is clean. By Vermont standards, maybe a little bit more dicey, but that's Vermont standards. Who fucking cares? That's about all. Peace out.